Hi, and welcome to Alberta Impact. I'm your host, Bryce Lambert. In lieu of the recent COVID-19 pandemic, like most, we've had to adjust our platform a little bit. However, I'm still focused now more than ever to bring you more information and stories about the good things that are happening here in Alberta. We've actually looked to step up production here to tell more and show more. We had set out to do 42 episodes in our season 1 and are still on track to do so. I'd like to give a big shout out to all of the guests this year who have come to help us tell you about all the awesome organizations, initiatives, and stories that impact us all. I would really like to hear more from you, our viewers, so if this comes across your feed, please feel free to give us a hello or tell us what you think about the episodes. Don't be shy, as we started this entire thing to start conversations. And if you like what you hear and see, be sure to give us a like and share to help spread more and tell more people about the conversations and include them in the conversations. Now, to today's episode, businesses all over the world have had to adapt and adopt technology, now more than ever, from communication online transactions, and ordering, all the way to banking. And that's where we're going to take a look at things today. As this pandemic thrashes through the economies, questions and fears are popping up all over. Where do you put your money? How much? And why? No one has really all the answers, but before this all came to be, I had the opportunity to sit down with a local Bitcoin specialist, Adam O'Brien of Bitcoin Solutions, to help me understand cryptocurrencies and Bitcoin itself. Here's what I learned, so please take a look. Welcome back to Alberta Impact. I'm your host, Bryce Lambert. In recent years, the term cryptocurrency has become a more common topic of conversation, especially as the age of digital transactions becomes a more and more preferred method to do business. But what exactly is cryptocurrency? Or maybe a reference you might be more familiar with, Bitcoin. To help all of us understand this a little bit better, we reached out to Adam O'Brien from Bitcoin Solutions to clarify some questions. Adam, thanks for joining us.
Thanks for having me, man.
Absolutely. Awesome. So this whole cryptocurrency thing, I mean, the world is changing, business is developing and kind of growing into becoming more adaptable and it needs to come up with new solutions to be more efficient. And cryptocurrency has become a pretty prime topic for something like that in the conversation. So can you kind of give us a rundown? What exactly is cryptocurrency?
Yeah, wow. I think so. Cryptocurrency is basically as it's intended to be, or Bitcoin as it's intended to be, is a decentralized way to move a token of value. So, thinking about Bitcoin, you really have to take a step back and think about what is money or what is value. You know, we all live in houses, we all drive cars, and we've all assigned a certain value to those houses or to those cars, or to our paper money, or to the money we use on our debit card. And we have to think, why does it have value? Well, it has value because other people also think it has value. The difference is with our money or with houses, we've got kind of a central party that kind of tells us what we can or can't do with that, and also a central party, especially with money, when we can or can't access it. And so Bitcoin, as it's designed, is a way to kind of eliminate yourself from that centralization and from the potential downfall of that centralization, and have a way to transact with the whole world virtually in a peer-to-peer fashion without, we call it in the industry, it's called trustless. So you don't have to trust that it will be there. It's always there, proven on the broader term, which is blockchain.
Gotcha. Okay. So what is the big advantage to adopting Bitcoin cryptocurrency?
I mean, I think that depends where you live. And I've said this quite frequently and quite often. Here in Canada and North America, we're very lucky. We have like a solid banking system. There's a ton of you can say about the government and all that stuff, but at the end of the day, we're not in fear of our entire currency collapsing. But if you look across the world, it happens more than you'd think. I mean, in the last just in the last decade, we've had multiple currencies around the world collapse. Look at Venezuela right now in absolute shambles, of a country that at one point had quite a strong monetary policy and monetary capabilities. So we look at governments that are just totally ruining and destroying their fiat or their paper currency, and Bitcoin certainly alleviates that stress. And anytime something holds a value worldwide, it's infinitely more valuable. Just like the reason gold is more valuable than our paper money is because you can spend it anywhere, right? If you take a Canadian dollar to Russia, you can't do anything. It's worth more as warmth than it is to buy gas or coffee or forgiveness, rent. You can't do any of that with Canadian dollars. And same thing, if someone came to me here and was like, here's a Russian ruble, I'd be like, great, like go take that someplace that I don't have any use for that. But if someone came with a brick of gold or a Bitcoin, anywhere in the world, that's going to have value. And so I think it's a way for the borderless world to participate in money. Up until Bitcoin, money hasn't been truly borderless. It's been relatively restricted, and I think Bitcoin alleviates those restrictions.
I love the universal concept of it. So it's acceptable anywhere. Now, does the value of I'll use Bitcoin because I know there's other currencies, but we'll stick with Bitcoin for now because that's kind of I think the one that most people have heard. But does the value of that Bitcoin change when it goes to Russia or goes to China, or is it just consistently the same value? Like, how is that relationship? So, like, just to kind of simplify my ask is, if I go buy $1 Coke from China with my dollar from Canada, my dollar Canadian buys $1.25 of or the yen or whichever. How does that relationship convert over in the Bitcoin world or the cryptocurrency world?
That's that's a great question. So we have a joke in the industry that says 1 Bitcoin is worth 1 Bitcoin, and that's very true. And my answer to that would be Bitcoin has a relatively stable value at any given time across currencies, but because of our currency variations, it doesn't. So $1 is equal to 1.25 Canadian dollars is equal to 10,000 yen is equal to 1.15 Australian dollars and maybe 87 euro or 87 cents euro. And so 1 Bitcoin will of course vary in the different geographic regions based on the local currency, but except for in extreme scenarios. For example, this past week, Iran has been like a horrific political climate and all the tragedy that's been there. And Bitcoin right now in Iran is selling for $33,000, which is 4 times more what it's worth in US.
Wow.
And there's no reason really for that. It could be a smaller market. It could be because people are trying to get out, and the Iranian currency, for whatever reason, is not accessible. There could be a number of different reasons. Same thing happened in South Korea. Excuse me, South Korea in 2017. Bitcoin was trading at double what the market value was, for no apparent reason other than political climates and whatever else. So, excuse me.
No worries.
So I think that to answer your question, the value itself remains the same, other than the fiat kind of relation that we see,
right? Which
is what we're used to. What like a brick of gold is worth a brick of gold, but it's worth $1,500 and 1,000 euros and whatever else.
Yeah. Correct me if I'm wrong. Like back in the day, I mean, we used to value the paper money based off of what used to be in the reserve, and because I kind of understand a little bit, or I kind of I see why cryptocurrency became such a sought after resource when we started looking at debt load. So we were comparing what our economy was based off of when the debt was outpacing what we actually had in the reserve. So I understand that concept. So how do you kind of navigate where the value of Bitcoin sits? Now I know we kind of talked earlier about it's almost like a perceived value.
Yeah.
So navigating, like, we don't understand why Bitcoin shot through the roof in lieu of recent events worldwide, or why it drops in value all of a sudden. It's kind of like this. It is a phenomenon to sense. So how do you navigate that as, say, an investor or someone who sells and purchases Bitcoin?
Yeah, so that's 2 very different strategies. Personally, what we recommend at Bitcoin Solutions, with understanding that we're not certified investor, we're not accredited financial advice givers by any stretch, but a rule of thumb that I kind of go by is the 1% rule. It's quite common in the industry. if a traditional investor has 1% of their investment portfolio in Bitcoin, that will fare very well for them. And the 1% rule is kind of basically it's designed, or it's been conceptualized to provide upside with like virtually no risk. I mean, 1%, if you have a $100 investment portfolio and you put $1 into Bitcoin, that's like, you should be fine.
And we've heard massive success stories. Like what you're explaining is proven to be very successful if you are, you've got the persistence and the resilience to hold out on the market.
Well, that's exactly
You're in it for the long game, essentially. You can't be in it for the short game.
You have to be in it for the long game. And
Yes.
I think watching it day to day, unless you're trying to actively trade, and people that try and day trade Bitcoin oftentimes get wrecked by the markets because the market swings are incredible.
Yeah.
But I think buying it, holding it, is by far the best way you can invest in Bitcoin.
Right. Well, and I think day trading in general is just that's a massive undertaking. That's a full-time job, whether it's in Bitcoin or any other currency that's out there, or any kind of even commodity in market. So now we've talked a lot about Bitcoin. Now I believe that's kind of like the foundation of cryptocurrency. No worries.
Sorry, man.
No, it's okay. So that's kind of the foundation of cryptocurrency. What are some of the other areas that are proving to be, I guess, maybe not keeping pace with Bitcoin, but to be proving to have a success in that kind of digital world of transactions?
Yeah, there's lots of chatter in the industry that Bitcoin is old tech, or Bitcoin is not as good as some of its successors. Personally, I don't believe that to be true. I find the foundation that Bitcoin sits on to be proven, and I find it to be, the best. Personally, there are over 1,000 other cryptocurrencies.
Wow.
Lots of them Ponzi schemes. Lots of them worthless. Lots of them doing the exact same thing Bitcoin does. For example, Litecoin is another very famous, pretty early cryptocurrency.
Yep.
And it does the exact same thing Bitcoin does. It's just got a few different protocols. Basically, the creator just kind of like Control F, find, and then replace on the white paper, and voila. So it's I'm coming at it from a point of view of a guy that's been in Bitcoin when it was just Bitcoin.
Yeah.
And so maybe I'm now the old man on my front porch saying, these kids these days, they don't know any, But I'm also in the industry, and I like to think I have a fair amount of knowledge about the industry. And so, to answer your question in a very long-winded fashion, I'd say, any other cryptocurrency that's not Bitcoin should be really researched more than what the founder of the currency says.
Yeah.
I think
they could tell you anything.
I mean, and they will.
Yeah, exactly.
And in 2017, we saw that Bitcoin kind of led this crypto bull run, and that was the first time, my grandma was like, "Hey, Bitcoin! I know, I've heard. That's what my grandson does. I know that." And when you're sitting on a plane and someone asks what you do, when you say Bitcoin, they say, "Oh yeah, I've kind of heard of that." That first time that happened was in 2017. So of course, when everyone collectively jumps into a market, the market just shoots up, right?
Right.
And that led way to a bunch of scams. People saying, "Hey, here's my random coin," and that turned out to be just a huge scam. And people put a bunch of money in. Lots of them made a lot of money, and anyone holding the bag up top just had the floor taken out from underneath them,
right,
and lost a bunch of money.
Right.
And don't get me wrong, Bitcoin is hyper volatile. It goes up and down like anything.
Right.
But I think it was released recently that the best performing asset of the decade was Bitcoin, which is pretty cool.
Yeah.
It's up like 9 million% in 10 years, which I think is a little better than what the Fed does on their money. So
what the?
Yeah, it's pretty shocking.
Yeah.
Other coins probably have the same kind of percentage increase, but I think at the end of the day, when you truly dig into the protocols and the technology that is Bitcoin, the blockchain it runs on, the reason it exists, I think Bitcoin is the most sound.
So it's interesting because I think as something that lasts is like when it lasts longer in an ecosystem, its strength becomes stronger, its relevancy, its legitimacy becomes a lot stronger. And if Bitcoin's kind of proving to, well, we're lasting the longest, and as more and more people jump on it as a method of currency exchange and as a method of value to value exchange, its legitimacy holds a lot stronger, truer, and it holds a more firm point in an economy. So with that being said, with Bitcoin, what is the biggest advantages? And we kind of touched a little bit about it at the beginning of a business and individuals to adopt it. We want to see, so like say like Apple or like Tesla and things like that. Why would they what would make them be a preferred user of Bitcoin over a credit card, over debit, or just cold hard cash?
Yeah, I think certainly for those big companies we're talking about, there's a ton of value just in like Forex. So like Apple, who has a presence worldwide, obviously, or Tesla, who just launched a big factory in China, they are a U.S. company that is selling product across the world. So they're paying a ton, and they probably get a pretty sweet deal from their Forex broker, but they pay a ton in currency exchange. So having a unit of value that holds a worldwide value obviously is advantageous. Now, there could be an argument to that Bitcoin is wildly volatile, and lots of companies that participate in the Bitcoin network, they do have to hedge against the volatility of Bitcoin. Other advantages, on the merchant side of things could include things like protection. So right now, when you make a credit card payment at a gas station or at Tim Hortons, I think it can be reversed for 90 days. So let's say you and I go to a sports bar, catch the hockey game, and there's a guy in there who's just like blitzed out of his mind and buys the whole bar a drink, let's say. And then 3 days later, his wife is looking at the Visa statement and says, "Oh man, $1,000 at your local." That can't be right. My husband would never do that. And she calls Visa, and Visa now has the opportunity and the option to take that money out of the merchant account, the bar's account, and deposit it back into the Visa card.
Gotcha. Yep.
And with Bitcoin, it's not reversible like that. There's a very, very limited amount of time when a very, very highly skilled person could reverse a Bitcoin payment.
Gotcha.
Called an unconfirmed transaction. Once a transaction is confirmed, it's cemented in a blockchain that transaction getting built on top of it. It'd be like trying to take a pebble out of the concrete floor under your studio here. It wouldn't work.
Right.
You just couldn't do it. and so the blockchain is what really provides that protection for merchants over and above transaction speed and speed to finality would be a term that they use. And of course for a young cafe accepting Bitcoin, like I know of cafes and local retailers, high margin product, like a cafe especially. If you're selling $5 coffee that costs you 42 cents, and you accept Bitcoin for that, and Bitcoin 10x's or goes up 9 million% in 10 years, well, your coffee is all of a sudden more valuable.
Best coffee sale of your life.
Exactly.
Right? Like a $4 cup of coffee turns into $4 million.
Thank you very much. Right?
Right?
And so that is another kind of benefit to those high margin kind of retailers that have the luxury of not needing to use every ounce of profit to stay afloat.
Gotcha. So now I like the efficiency of it in that sense, where it's just transactions, rock solid, like you were saying, and then also like you're eliminating like kind of that middleman.
A little bit, yeah. You have no processing fees, right?
Yeah.
It's truly peer to peer. So you have the network that does the work for you.
Yeah.
And the network is free. The network is just it's like the internet. People pay for internet providers, but they don't pay for the actual internet.
Yeah, yeah.
And the blockchain is the internet.
Right.
The difference is you don't need a provider.
Right. And I think, and we do hear cryptocurrency, Bitcoin, and blockchain used in the same sentence quite often. And I think that there might be, I know for me, sometimes I lose the connection between the two and how those two work. So just a little bit, we won't talk too much, but how does it go, how do those two relate? How does that blockchain, because we're talking about businesses now going into the future, and the importance of what blockchain can bring to businesses
Totally.
from an information perspective, from an efficiency perspective, accuracy, record keeping and tracking. I mean, blockchain has some significant powers. And now, where does cryptocurrency and blockchain, where do they get married?
Totally. So Bitcoin, I would explain it as Bitcoin being an application of blockchain. So where the internet is this huge, blockchain. Email might be an application that uses the internet, where Bitcoin is an application that uses blockchain. So blockchain really is a fancy term for database.
Gotcha.
If we're breaking it down, the difference is a blockchain, a true blockchain, should be available to be audited by anyone, and that's the biggest benefit. So when you hear about a food company putting their food or their product onto a blockchain, what that should mean is at any time, you or I, as the consumer, can look at any given time and see where that food was sourced, how it was raised, the products it was used, to be graphic, what kind of slaughterhouse was it in, and the provider of that food, each provider, everyone that touches the food should be logging on the blockchain along the way how whatever data points we as the consumer kind of demand. And so, blockchain can eliminate a bunch of tedious work while providing a ton of value for the end consumer to really have like some significant data, for us that care. How's our food being raised? Where has this been before it's been in my hand? For example, for shipping companies, having data points along the way. Like, no, UPS shows you where it's going, but the problem is, for example, UPS's database is closed and held by UPS. They can tell you whatever they want.
Right.
How many times have you said package is delivered and it's 4 hours away, right? They tell you
just had that actually.
It happens all the time, and anytime we're using a database that's centrally controlled, including our money, we are reliant on that person or that company being honest. And there's too much opportunity right now for companies to be dishonest, and the blockchain should really fix that. Now, unfortunately, the education around blockchain is minimal, and people hear, well, it's on a blockchain, so there you go, it's fixed. It's like, no, that's not the case. Like, can you look at it? Is it actually, third-party audited? Meaning, is there a non-partisan person or company or thing looking at it, verifying that this is actually true? Can we look at it at any given time? Is it delayed in any case? Like, when you look at the Bitcoin blockchain, it's real time. There's no question that coin A went to wallet X from wallet Y at any given time, because it's real time, automatic, and that's third party audited by hundreds of millions of individuals across the world.
Right.
It is the strongest blockchain on the planet because there are so many people that are decentrally auditing the blockchain, and that's what makes it so strong. And I think if the world moved like that, how much easier would it be for you or I to verify that, how many construction mishaps are there because the ground wasn't as advertised? Or what do you mean my house site was built on a marsh and we can't dig a basement? What do you mean there's sand below my foundation and my house is sinking? All that kind of stuff that is relatively figured out now. But if you're a shady developer, you've got ample opportunity to just bury that.
Right.
And the blockchain fixes that. And that, I think, is the
You can be a lot more informed on your decision-making process.
Oh, yeah, totally.
And be more confident in your decision-making process because you've got that confidence that the information is accurate.
Yeah, and then moving from that, our privacy is a lot stronger. So if you're going to get a mortgage, let's say, and the bank says you need to have an income of $100,000 a year and you need to have a credit score of 700 to get this kind of mortgage. Right now, the process is the bank getting all of your data. Do you have a job? Are there regular paychecks going into your account? What does your T4 say? And they're getting the actual hard numbers. So that person that might happen to be your old high school girlfriend is sitting across the table from you, regardless of conflict of interest, looking at some of the most delicate information in your life.
Yeah.
And with the blockchain, if it's trusted and you could potentially have a pass fail. Do you make 100 grand? Yes or no? Right? If you make 101 or you make 700, it doesn't matter.
Right.
It's just yes or no,
Right.
pass or fail, right? And it allows consumers to protect I think our information, which in this day and age, information is everything, right? It's the currency of the 2020 year, of 2020 century.
You've sparked so many different things that I want to have a conversation with you about.
Nice.
That we will get. We'll probably do that off camera. My last question for you before we go, with blockchain and with cryptocurrency, if we get these big companies like Apple, Tesla behind on these, Google, Amazon, and they're like, say one day they just flip the switch and say, all right, that's it. We're not taking credit cards. We're not taking Visas or debits and stuff like that. But we're actually going to just take cryptocurrency. Now we've cemented that as our economy base. Is that a possibility for the future? Maybe not now.
Yeah.
But let's say 50 years from now, let's say we get this blockchain figured out.
Right.
The efficiencies are there. The middleman is kind of gone. Because from what you've just explained to me about blockchain, we could have, if blockchain had been adopted, cryptocurrencies had been adopted 20 years ago.
Oh, yeah.
In full swing, we would have avoided some booms and busts that we went through, some economic crashes. And gearing forward from a visionary perspective, we would be avoiding that into the future because the decisions are not guesses anymore.
Yeah.
They're at least they're not a 50-50. They're
more calculated.
They're a
for sure.
30-70 kind of thing scenario. Do you kind of see that being a potential future?
Yeah, it's tough to say. I mean, my philanthropic mindset goes towards of course that yields a better future. That is better for every consumer on planet Earth.
I feel like again, I always reference Star Trek.
Okay,
Star Trek, where we finally said, you know what, money is stupid.
Yeah.
We just got to get on the path of this is the better thing for the humankind, and the only time we ever get into that mentality is if aliens invade or a giant space rock's coming at us, and we've only seen that in the movies yet. But that's kind of where I'm going with that question is if we got to that point of the value is just the value of what it's worth to us as a species to get to the next level of existence, I guess, or where we want to go to sustain and survive.
No, totally, man. I mean, it's a chicken or the egg scenario,
right? Because
if more users demand it, then more companies have to offer it. However, corporate America has to die for that to happen. Right now, there is so much value. If you don't think Tim Cook gets a pretty fat paycheck from his processing account, you're wrong. If you don't think these high values, I mean, you look at the liquor industry and the benefits and the perks that business owners, bar owners get from those big. If you don't think the banking industry is similar on a plateau that's way bigger, that's what's stopping it. I think there is so much incentive for corporations to accept credit card at both their bottom line, but also the cost of the consumer. We've been coerced into using credit cards. I mean, the cash back that you get and the ease. I mean, how easy is it to use your credit card? Bitcoin is not that easy to use right now. Personally, I believe Bitcoin to be better served as a storage of value, a storage of wealth, if you will. No one goes.
Investment, essentially, is what you're saying.
Yeah, I think so. I mean, you don't go to Remedy Cafe here in Edmonton and try and pay with your TFSA. That's not what happens. You pay with a Visa card that you then maybe pay off with your TFSA if you're doing things wrong, or you pay off with your checking account, hopefully, or you pay off at all, I guess, hopefully. Right. But you don't. In my mind, Bitcoin as a storage of wealth works a lot better.
Gotcha.
Because it's sound money. That's a buzz term right now. It's sound money. It's not going to be taken over by the conglomerate that is, corporate America or the big bad government or what have you. But that being said, if your storage of wealth can also be your means to transact, then why not?
Right.
Right. Then why not?
Right. Super awesome. Adam, thank you so much for coming and joining us today. And it's
been great.
And like literally, you've kind of blown my mind and informed me on some things. I'm like, oh, I never thought of it that way. So that's super awesome. So again, thank you so much for joining us. Super appreciated. So
my pleasure.
There you have it, folks. Hopefully that helps bring a little more knowledge and clarity to you about the potentially world-changing method on how we view currency and do business into the future. What do you think about cryptocurrency? We want to hear from you and hear your thoughts. So join the conversation. Like, follow, and subscribe to our YouTube and Facebook, and join the Alberta Impact community. Until next week, 7 p.m.
What that's called.